I've always been the boring, responsible one. The guy who pays the credit card before the statement even closes. The guy who still balances his checkbook even though nobody does that anymore. I'm 43, work in finance, not the sexy kind, corporate accounting. And my biggest thrill used to be finding a duplicate vendor payment before audit season. So when I opened my banking app on a Tuesday morning and saw $487,920, 14 sitting in my checking account, my first thought wasn't I'm rich. My first thought was, someone is getting fired. My second thought was, this is going to be a nightmare. I stared at the numbers long enough that my coffee went cold. The deposit line read, Wire Credit, Hawthorne Title Escrow. I don't know anyone named Hawthorne. I wasn't buying a house. I wasn't selling one. I hadn't even refinanced. The most exciting title thing I'd done recently was renew my car registration. I took a slow breath, like my therapist taught me after my dad died, and told myself, okay, this is simple. You call the bank. You return it. You move on. I didn't understand yet that the money was going to pull the skin off my life like tape. The bank rep put me on hold twice, then came back with that tight, scripted cheer that means, this is above my pay grade. Sir, that amount is substantial. We'll need to open an investigation. Please do not move or spend any funds. I'm not trying to move it, I said, calm even when my throat felt like it had sand in it. I'm trying to give it back. I understand, but we have to verify the origin. Could be fraud. Could be an error. I stared out the kitchen window at my tiny backyard. The same sad winter grass. The same broken fence board I kept promising I'd fix. Nothing about my life matched a $500,000 wire. When I told my wife, Lauren, she blinked like I'd spoken another language. Wait, how much? $487,000. She laughed once, sharp and weird. Okay, stop. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I turned the phone toward her. She leaned in, smelled like the vanilla lotion she uses when she's nervous, and her face shifted through disbelief into something else I couldn't place. What did you do? She whispered. Nothing, I said. That's the point. Lauren straightened, looked around the kitchen like someone might be listening through the walls. Don't touch it, she said quickly. Just don't touch it. I thought she was just being sensible. I had no idea she was scared for a different reason. The next day, the money was still there. The bank called back with a case number and no answers. Could it be a scam? Lauren asked over dinner, pushing her chicken around like it had offended her. If it was a scam, they'd want me to send it somewhere, I said. This is an incoming wire from an escrow account. That's not how most scams work. She kept glancing at my phone every time it buzzed. Her knee bounced under the table, making my water glass tremble. You're acting like you did something wrong, I said gently. Her eyes flicked up. I'm just stressed. Bills, you know. We weren't broke, but we weren't comfortable either. Lauren's job at the dental office was stable. My salary was decent, but we'd had hospital bills when Dad got sick, and we dipped into savings to help my sister after her divorce. Normal, grown-up money stuff. Still, Lauren's anxiety felt bigger than that. That night, I lay awake listening to the house settle and thinking of every possible explanation. A lawsuit settlement? A mistaken account number? Someone laundering money through random people? The number sat behind my eyelids like a neon sign. At 2:13 a.m., my phone lit up with an email from my bank. Account restriction notice. Not just don't touch the funds. My whole account was frozen. I drove to the branch in the morning because I needed to see a human face. The manager, a woman with a tight bun and a practiced smile, led me into her office and shut the door. Mr. Klein, she said, we've placed a hold pending verification. This wire came with documentation. Documentation? I repeated. She turned her monitor slightly. I saw a scanned letterhead, a signature, a couple official-looking stamps. It was titled Disbursement Authorization and it had my name, my account number, my address. I felt my stomach drop. That's not my signature. She frowned. It matches what we have on file. I wanted to laugh. My signature on file is a lazy squiggle from when I was 19 and thought cursive was fancy. Who authorized it? I asked. There's a reference to a property transaction, she said. But the escrow company has not responded to our inquiries. I walked out to my car and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing like I'd just run upstairs. This wasn't a harmless error. Someone had filed paperwork with my information. Someone had moved almost $500,000 into my name. And if this was fraud, the last place it would land was on the real criminal. It would land on the guy whose account number was on the wire. Me. That evening, Lauren came home pale. She didn't take her coat off. "We need to talk," she said. I looked up from the kitchen table where I'd been making a list. Who to call, what to document, which emails to forward to myself. The boring, safe things I do when fear tries to take the wheel. Lauren's hands shook. "I know where it came from." My pen stopped. "What?" She swallowed hard. It's from your dad." I actually felt relief at first, like my brain grabbed onto the first explanation that wasn't federal prison. "My dad didn't have that kind of money," I said. Lauren winced. "He did. Kind of. Not exactly." And then she said the sentence that cracked everything open. "Your dad had a settlement. He never told you. Dad died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months from diagnosis to funeral. He'd been a quiet man who drove a beat-up Silverado and clipped coupons like it was a sport. He'd always said, 'We're fine.' And he meant it like a prayer." Lauren slid her phone across the table. An email thread. Subject line, Hawthorne title escrow disbursement. My name was on it. My account number. And Lauren's email address was CC'd. "You were involved?" I said, voice flat. She shook her head fast. "Not like that. I didn't know what to do." Lauren told me my dad had been part of a class action lawsuit connected to a chemical spill near his old job. Something about groundwater contamination. Dad had signed onto it years ago, and apparently there'd finally been a payout after he died. "But why would it go through a title company?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. Tears made her mascara look like smudged charcoal. "The lawyer emailed me because your dad listed me as an alternate contact." I sat there trying to reconcile the man who taught me to reuse aluminum foil with the idea that he'd quietly been sitting on a lawsuit that could pay out almost $500,000. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, still weirdly calm. Lauren's lips pressed together. "Because I thought you'd make me give it to your sister." That hit like a slap, not because of my sister, because of what it revealed about Lauren's view of me. Like I was a walking moral obligation. Like she needed to hide money from me the same way you hide candy from a kid. "I was going to tell you," she insisted. "I swear. I just wanted it to go smoothly. And instead it went into my checking account with forged paperwork and froze our finances," I said. She flinched. "I didn't forge anything." I believed her. Mostly. But something didn't add up. If this was a settlement, why did it require escrow? Why did it look like a property disbursement? Why was there a signature pretending to be mine? Lauren wiped her face and whispered, "There's more." Of course there was. Lauren finally told me about the debt. Not the normal "we overspent at Target" debt. The kind of debt you only learn about when a certified letter shows up and your stomach drops through the floor. "It started as stupid stuff," she said. "Online shopping. Then I tried one of those apps that lets you invest. And then I gambled?" I guessed because the shape of her shame had a familiar outline. Her face crumpled. "Slots. On my phone. It was so easy. And when I lost, I kept thinking I could win it back." I felt cold all over, like my body was turning into tile. "How much?" Lauren's voice was barely audible. 112,000. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "We don't have 112,000, I said. "I know," she sobbed. "I took out loans. Cash advances. I opened a card in your name." That was the first big twist. Money didn't just show up. Money had already been bleeding out of my life, and I hadn't even noticed because I trusted the person standing in the kitchen with me. Lauren had seen my dad's settlement email and thought it was a lifeline. She hadn't told me because she planned to use it to plug the hole before I found it. I tried to get them to send it to an account I could access, she said. But they needed it in your name, because it was your dad's and you're the beneficiary. So you panicked, I said. She nodded. And then someone forged my signature, I said slowly. Lauren's eyes widened. I didn't. I know, I said. But someone did. The escrow company finally called me back 2 days later. A man with a tired voice introduced himself as Brent from Hawthorne Title. Mr. Klein, there seems to have been a misunderstanding, he said. Like nearly $500,000 landing in a stranger's checking account was a mix-up with a pizza order. I'm trying to return the funds, I said. My account is frozen. My bank needs verification. I can email confirmation, he offered quickly. We can also provide amended documentation. Before you do anything, I said, I need to understand why a settlement payment is coming through a title company. Silence. Then, we handle a variety of disbursements. That's not an answer, I said. He sighed. Look, the originating entity requested escrow services to distribute funds to multiple parties. Which entity? Another pause. I'm not authorized to disclose. Then I'm not authorized to move anything? I snapped, and my calm finally cracked. Someone forged my signature. My wife is in massive debt. My bank thinks I'm laundering money. And you're telling me you handle a variety of disbursements? Brent lowered his voice. Off the record, Mr. Klein, I would not rush to return it. My stomach clenched. Why? Because the originating entity is under review, he said carefully. If you send it back and it's seized, you may never see it again. Also, if it's determined the funds were properly due to you. Properly due? I repeated. He cleared his throat. You might want an attorney. He hung up like he'd said too much. That was twist 2. The return the money plan, my neat little responsible solution, was suddenly not obviously right. I did what responsible people do when the world gets weird. I paid a lawyer $350 to tell me everything I already feared. My attorney, Nora, had sharp eyes and a no-nonsense voice that made me feel both safer and smaller. She reviewed the paperwork, then said, This isn't a class action settlement. I blinked. What? This references a trust disbursement connected to a property lien release, she said, tapping the page. Your father may have been involved in something else entirely. I felt my throat tighten. My father worked at a plant. He coached Little League. Nora held up a hand. People can be many things. She started digging. Public records, probate filings, LLC registrations. 2 days later, she called me and said, Your father was a listed member of an LLC I can't fully trace. It appears to have been tied to real estate acquisitions through intermediaries. I sat in my car outside my office, staring at the steering wheel again like it had answers. Dad, who drove a 2006 Silverado, had been involved in real estate through intermediaries. My dad, who once returned a $20 bill to the grocery clerk because she gave him too much change. Nora continued, There's also something else. The originating entity for this wire has connections to a vendor your company pays. My skin prickled. What vendor? She said the name. One I recognized instantly. A vendor I approved invoices for. Twist 3. The money wasn't just touching my family. It was touching my job. Suddenly the wire felt less like a random event and more like a hook in my jaw. I went to work the next day and looked at everything differently. The fluorescent lights felt harsher. The carpet smelled like old coffee. Coworkers' laughter sounded fake. I watched my boss, Darren, walk by with his polished shoes and his effortless grin, and I wondered how much he knew. That afternoon, Darren called me into his office. He closed the door and leaned against his desk like we were having a friendly chat. Hey, he said, you doing okay? You've seemed distracted. I kept my voice level. Personal stuff. He nodded sympathetically. Listen, I heard from accounting that your direct deposit didn't go through. Bank issue? My heart thudded. How would accounting know my bank issue? He smiled too quick. Small company. People talk. I realized, in that moment, that Darren was checking whether my accounts were frozen. He added casually, "If you need any help, we can float you an advance." There it was, a trap disguised as kindness. I forced a small laugh. "We're fine." Darren's eyes lingered on me a beat too long. "Good, because things are sensitive right now. Auditors are coming early this year." That night, I told Nora everything about Darren's behavior. She didn't sound surprised. "Here's what I think," she said. "Someone used your identity to route money through your account, possibly to create a paper trail that points away from them. If your father's name is involved too, it may have been set up long ago." "How?" I asked. Nora's voice softened. "Your father might not have been as simple as you thought." That was the moment my understanding of my dad cracked. And with it, the version of myself that believed I could control money by being responsible. The bank unfroze my account temporarily for living expenses under Nora's supervision. The big chunk of money stayed locked. Lauren and I existed in a tense truce. We slept in the same bed but felt like we were miles apart. Sometimes I'd hear her crying in the bathroom late at night. I didn't comfort her. I didn't yell either. I felt numb, like my emotions were sitting in a waiting room. Nora filed formal notices, requested wire origin details, and, at her suggestion, I filed a report with the IRS whistleblower office and the SEC tip line. I didn't even know what I was alleging, not fully, just that something smelled wrong, and my name was in the stink. Then the first real domino fell. 2 federal agents came to my house on a Friday morning. 1 man, 1 woman, both polite, both carrying folders. They asked for me by full name. Lauren stood behind me in the doorway, trembling. "Mr. Klein," the woman said, "we're investigating financial misconduct involving your employer and several associated entities. Your account appears connected to a transfer we're tracking." My mouth went dry. I didn't ask for it. I tried to return it. "We believe you," the man said, which somehow made me feel worse, not better. "But we need your cooperation." They sat at my kitchen table, my table where I'd eaten cereal as a kid when Dad still lived in this house, and asked me question after question about vendor approvals, invoice processes, who had access to what. In the middle of it, the woman said gently, "Your father's name came up before. Did he ever mention an LLC called?" She named it. I felt my face drain. "No." She nodded like she expected that. Twist 4. This wasn't just my mess. Dad's shadow had been in it first. Here's the part where I thought it was over. After weeks of interviews, document requests, and sleepless nights, Nora called me and said, "The government is moving on your employer. Darren and 2 others are being indicted. The vendor network is bigger than we thought." I sat down hard on the couch. "So, my part is done?" "Not done," she said. "But you're not the target. You're a witness." My lungs finally took a full breath for what felt like the first time in a month. The frozen money, Nora explained, would likely be seized as part of the case, unless we could prove it was a legitimate distribution owed to me and not proceeds of ongoing fraud. "But your father's connection complicates things," she warned. Still, the idea that Darren was going down felt like justice. I pictured his perfect grin collapsing. I pictured the auditors finally seeing what I'd never looked for because I trusted my boss. Lauren, hearing Darren had been arrested, burst into tears on the spot. "So it's not your fault," she kept saying. "It's not your fault." I let her cry against my shoulder. For a second, I felt like maybe we could rebuild. Like maybe this would become a terrible story we told later, the year everything almost fell apart but didn't. We even talked carefully, like walking on ice, about counseling, about selling the house, about paying off her debt if the money ever cleared. Felt like a false sunrise. Warm light before the storm comes back. Because the next week, Lauren's phone rang, and everything unraveled again. She answered on speaker without thinking. A man's voice filled the kitchen. "Lauren," he said, "you were supposed to send the first payment." Lauren's face went white. I reached over and hit mute. "Who is that?" Her eyes darted around like a trapped animal. It's nothing." I unmuted. "Who are you?" I asked. There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Tell your husband I'm just someone who helped you out." And I'm not patient. I muted again. My heart hammered. Helped you out how? Lauren started shaking. He's not a lender exactly. What is he? She whispered. He's who I borrowed from when the cards maxed out. I didn't tell you because I thought the settlement would. It's not a settlement, I said, voice low. And you didn't just hide debt. You brought someone like this into our lives. Her eyes filled. I was desperate. I took her phone and looked at the call history. Dozens of calls. Texts with threats disguised as friendliness. Hey babe, just checking in. Would hate for anything embarrassing to show up at your job. Then I found the bank transfer receipts. Lauren had been sending him money for months. Small amounts at first, then larger, using Zelle from accounts I didn't recognize. I stared at one receipt and felt the room go distant. The sending account number looked familiar. Too familiar. It was my mother's old account, the one that was supposed to be closed after she died. I looked up slowly. Lauren, what did you do with my mom's money? My mom's death had been quiet. No drama. A small life insurance payout Dad handled. I trusted him, and I trusted Lauren. Now I realized quiet doesn't always mean simple. Sometimes it means hidden. Nora traced it faster than I could emotionally process it. My dad had quietly kept my mom's old account open. He'd moved funds into it over the years, small chunks, like he was watering a secret plant. He'd listed Lauren as a secondary contact. Lauren found it when she was drowning and used it like a life raft, then a shovel, then an anchor. And the escrow wire? It wasn't a random payout. It was a planned disbursement from the same network Darren was involved in, money that had been routed through entities Dad had ties to decades ago. The sick part was how intentional it all looked in hindsight. Dad had positioned things so money could land with me if something happened. Maybe he thought he was protecting us. Maybe he was trying to clean up his own mess. Maybe he told himself it didn't matter because it was only paperwork. Or maybe, this is the thought that still makes me feel hollow. Dad knew exactly what he was doing and counted on my responsible nature to keep the money from looking suspicious. Because of my reports and cooperation, the investigators offered me a deal. I wasn't charged, and my assistants strengthened their case. Months later, Nora told me the words I never expected to hear. You're eligible for a whistleblower award. Could be substantial. I laughed once like Lauren had, not because it was funny, because it was absurd. I had tried to return the money. I had tried to do the right thing. And by doing that, I'd become useful. Useful pays. The year after that is a blur of court dates, documents, and grief that didn't feel like grief until it hit me in the grocery store aisle because I saw a brand of cereal Dad used to buy. The government seized part of the wire as evidence, but not all of it. Some was deemed legitimately mine through Dad's estate structure, messy, ethically gray, but legally defensible. The whistleblower award was real. When it finally landed, it was more than the original wire. By the time everything closed, after legal fees and taxes, I had just over $1. $3 million in a separate account Nora told me not to touch until every last signature was inked. I remember standing in the bank office again. The same beige walls, the same stale air, and signing papers while my hand shook. I'd fantasized about money like this as a kid, winning the lottery, paying off the house, taking vacations without checking the balance first. Instead, it felt like holding a brick that had my father's fingerprints on it, and my wife's and Darren's and God knows who else's. Lauren and I divorced. Not explosively, quietly, like a dam cracking. She went to treatment for gambling and I paid off a portion of her debt as part of the settlement because I couldn't stomach the idea of that loan shark circling her forever. She cried and thanked me like I was saving her. I wasn't saving her. I was cutting the last thread between us. I sold the house. I moved into a smaller place closer to my sister. I set up college funds for my kids from a previous marriage, and a trust that can't be accessed on a whim, not by me in a moment of weakness, not by anyone who says they love me. Here's the financial truth that permanently altered me. I used to believe money was a scoreboard for responsibility. If you were careful, you'd be okay. If you were honest, you'd stay clean. If you did the right thing, things would work out. Now I know money is more like gravity. It doesn't care if you're good. It pulls on whatever is already there, fear, love, shame, greed, and it drags it into the open. I tried to return the money because I thought that's what a responsible man does. What I didn't understand was that the money wasn't just sitting in my account. It was already inside my family, inside my marriage, inside my history, waiting for the right moment to show me who we all really were. And when it was done, when the dust settled and the numbers finally stopped moving, I was rich. Not the kind of rich that feels like freedom, the kind that feels like evidence.